Everyone back tonight with Matthew chapter 14, and it says this: the death of John the Baptist. It says, at that time Herod the Tetrarch heard about the fame of Jesus, and he said to his servants, "This is John the Baptist. He has been raised from the dead. That is why these miraculous powers are at work in him." So, of course, Herod thought it was John the Baptist who was going around doing these things, and it was actually Christ that was doing it. For Herod had seized John and bound him and put him in prison for the sake of Herodias, his brother Philip's wife, so his sister-in-law, because John had been saying to him, "It is not lawful for you to have her." So basically, Herod had took his brother's wife and married her, and that's adultery, of course. And though he wanted to put him to death, he feared the people because they had held him to be a prophet. But when Herod's birthday came, the daughter of Herodias danced before the company and pleased Herod, so that he promised with an oath to give her whatever she might ask. Prompted by her mother, she said, "Give me the head of John the Baptist here on a platter." And the king was sorry, but because of his oath and his guest, he commanded it to be given. He sent and had John beheaded in the prison, and his head was brought on a platter and given to the girl. And she brought it to her mother, and his disciples came and took the body and buried it, and they went and told Jesus. Jesus feeds the 5,000. Now when Jesus heard this, he withdrew from there in a boat to a desolate place by himself. But when the crowds heard it, they followed him on foot from the towns. When he went ashore, he saw a great crowd, and he had compassion on them and healed their sick. Now when it was evening, the disciples came to him and said, This is a desolate place, and the day is now over. Send the crowds away to go to the villages and buy food for themselves. But Jesus said, They need not to go away. You give them something to eat. They said to him, "We have only 5 loaves here and 2 fish." And he said, "Bring them here to me." Then he ordered the crowds to sit down on the grass, and taking the 5 loaves and 2 fish, he looked up to heaven and said a blessing. Then he broke the loaves and gave them to the disciples, and the disciples gave them to the crowds. And they all ate and were satisfied, and they took up 12 baskets full of the broken pieces left over. And those who ate were about 5,000 men, besides women and children. Jesus walks on the water. Immediately he made the disciples get into the boat and go before him to the other side, while he dismissed the crowds. And after he had dismissed the crowds, he went up on the mountain by himself to pray. When evening came, he was there alone, but the boat by this time was long away from the land, beaten by the waves, for the wind was against them. And the 4th watch of the night he came to them, walking on the sea. But when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were terrified and said, "It is a ghost," and they cried out in fear. But immediately Jesus spoke to them, saying, "Take heart, it is I, do not be afraid." And Peter answered him, "Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water." He said, "Come." So Peter got out of the boat and walked on the water and came to Jesus. But when he saw the wind, he was afraid, and beginning to sink, he cried out, "Lord, save me." And Jesus immediately reached out his hand and took hold of him, saying to him, "O you of little faith, why did you doubt?" And when they got to the boat, the wind ceased, and those in the boat worshipped him, saying, "Truly you are the Son of God." Jesus heals the sick in Gennesaret. And when they had crossed over, they came to land at Gennesaret. And when the men of that place recognized him, they sent around to all that region and brought to him all who were sick, and implored him that they might only touch the fringe of his garment, and as many as touched it were made well. It's chapter 14. They have a little illustration here. It says the Galilean fishing boat. This illustration shows the type of boat that Jesus and his disciples probably used. Based on the remains of approximately a 2,000-year-old fishing boat found on the northwestern shore of the Sea of Galilee, it could hold 15 men. It was about 27 feet long, so it's a pretty big boat that they were on. About 8 feet wide and about 5 feet high. So it's a pretty big boat that they used to get from one side of the sea to the other. But yeah, that's the boat that they were fishing on, and to get to the other side. And yes, of course, that's the boat that Christ rode on. So that's chapter 14. About that, and about chapter 15 here shortly.